Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. Disgusting hot mic moment ends with San Francisco Bay Area School Board president sprinting for the exit. Parents who have had it with their teachers dragging their feet, getting back to work will surely be infuriated over this call. Board members of a school district in Oakley, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area, were caught mocking parents during a video call and could only respond with "uh-oh" when they realized all of their remarks were being broadcast live. I've said it for a while now, and I think a lot of other people have done so as well. Teachers are lazy. They worried about COVID, even if it's safe to reopen. The science is clear. Reopen the damn schools. Kids don't get it and they don't spread it. And now, even with teachers being vaccinated, they still don't want to work. And that's important to note. If teachers aren't receiving or aren't catching COVID from kids and they're vaccinated, what's the risk? Why don't they want to go to school? I'll tell you why. Because they figured out they don't even have to go to school and they're getting paid. They haven't missed a paycheck. All these government workers, all these whatever public sector employees, they've received paychecks throughout this when a lot of people have stopped receiving paychecks. I still have to pay my property taxes. I still have to pay sales tax. I still have to pay all these taxes. And yet, the income generated through my private business has gone down because people have less money to spend. Yet, teachers receive all the money that they should have been receiving. Politicians receive all the money that they should have received. So, where's the disconnect? What's the incentive to go back to work? Because they're receiving all the money they would receive even if they're going to work. So, why would they want to go back to work? It doesn't make any sense. And it's actually quite racist what they're doing, and I'll explain why in a minute. In the video, board member Kim Bede uses expletives in talking about parents. The board also talks about making parents call in and record their public comments rather than making them appear live in a meeting, and the recording would cut them off at exactly 3 minutes. All right, so let's see what happens when they find out that they're basically publicly broadcasting.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Just FYI, you guys have the meeting. Oh, we have the meeting open to the public right now.
Nuh-uh.
That's what Lori just said.
Great.
Uh-oh.
Oh, they canceled that. They basically disconnected that real quick as soon as they figured out they were being public on that. Before she realized the public was listening in, school board president Lisa Brezadine criticized parents who continue to be frustrated by the district's COVID-related school closures. They want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back. No, I want teachers to do their job. So, Kamala Harris, again, I really dislike this intersectional politics that's going on, but they're bringing up a good point. There's a lot of women being basically obligated to drop out of the workforce because they have to take care of their children at home. And I'll discuss how this negatively affects people of color here in a second.
And they don't know what we
Right.
do behind the scenes. And it's really unfortunate that they want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back.
Right.
Right. That's how I feel. And they
That's an interesting phone. It's very wide. It's very girthy. 3. School board trustee Richie Masadas then appeared to link students' frustration over closures to drug use.
My brother had a delivery service for medical marijuana. The high clientele were parents with their kids in school.
Just laughing because parents only want to send their kids to school so they can stay at home and get high. It's not that they want to go to work, right? That's a disgusting statement to make. So, okay, so I'm going to say how these school closures are disproportionately affecting people of color. So the last time I checked, I don't have the latest number, so I'm going to give like a ballpark number. The last time I looked, it was definitely over 50% of black children who are raised in a single parent home. What do you think happens when the kids can't go to school? What's going to happen to the parent? And if the parent can't afford a babysitter, is the parent going to be forced to either keep the kid home by themselves, in which they're not supposed to do, right? If the kid's under a certain age, you're not allowed to keep the kid home alone. Or are they supposed to take out debt to get a babysitter, or are they supposed to quit work so they can take care of the kids, but then they can't afford food or their home or their water or shelter or heat or what, you name it, right? They can't provide anything for their child because they can't work. And it's because these teachers are refusing to go to school. And it's so racist because it's disproportionately affecting people of color. That's one thing. Two, there was a lady in Ohio who's basically in jail because she works at Little Caesars. Her kids can't go to school. And guess what? She had her 10-year-old daughter watch her 2-year-old kid, or 10-year-old kid and a 2-year-old kid stay in a hotel room. She had somebody come by every hour to check on the kids. And she went to work. She didn't go party. She wasn't doing anything. She was working. And she still got arrested. And that's what happens when you have these selfish teachers who basically are laughing at the struggles of the minority community. And it is the teacher's fault. And guess what? They're disproportionately negatively affecting people of color, and they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed of themselves. The fallout was immediate. This isn't about education. It's about power as always. This is what they say when they think that the cameras are off. I'll say it again. They're lazy. They don't want to work. You don't get into education for a payday. Sorry, that's not how these careers pan out unless you're shamelessly corrupt. And there's a lot of that too on these schools. It caused the school board president to resign. Good. He should be sprinting for the exit after this call. Who the hell do these people think they are? The president of the Oakley Union Elementary School District Board of Trustees has resigned after being caught on video making disparaging comments about parents during a live public meeting Wednesday night. Superintendent Greg Hetrick was describing a proposal to limit public meeting comments to 3 minutes. It's easy to hide behind a screen. Apparently unaware that the public video feed was still live, Trustee Kim Bede said, "Are we alone? If you're going to call me out, I'm going to F you up." Hetrick issued a statement Thursday saying last night at Oakley Union Elementary School District regular board meeting, there were unfortunate and truly inappropriate comments made that were heard by many. These comments are not typical, and more importantly, they are not what the community should expect from our school district. They were typical. Sorry. They were extremely flippant. They were all laughing about it. It's probably a conversation that they've had hundreds of times. They were just caught with their pants down. So guess what? You gotta own up to it. That's what it is. And I believe this person actually, this was written by, the gentleman's name is Matt Vespa. And he actually says about actually what I just said. Oh, shut up. You got caught. Eat it. Deal with it. Now screw off. Which I feel is actually quite accurate, to be honest. Everyone on that school board should frankly go to hell. Vacation is over. Remote learning doesn't work. You have to get back into the classroom. If you can't do that, find another job, sit down, shut up, and listen to the science, which is telling all of you that keeping schools closed is unnecessary. Any argument to the contrary is grounded in idiocy and political nonsense. And I 100% agree. Because guess what? If the science says it's safe for teachers to go back to school and teachers are still saying, oh, well, we don't want to go back to school, but we also have to trust the science. Well, the science says you should be back in school. You not wanting to go to school means you don't trust the science. And that means you are anti-democratic, apparently, that you are a neo-fascistic white supremacist because you can't trust the science and you're just a Bible clutcher. Or so says Democrats, right? So before I jump over to the next story, once you go to notcensoredyet.com, I'm making updates to it right now. If you go to notcensoredyet.com/fact-checker, one of the first things you'll find, or basically the only thing you'll find, is Not Censored Yet's guide to fact checking. And there's a 5-step process. This is still a work in progress. It's going to be polished and fine-tuned into a fine gemstone. But as of right now, it is an ugly piece of coal. Not Censored Yet's 5 steps for accurate fact checking. Step 1, context is everything. Step 2, determine if the claim is a fact. Because basically, I can't fact check an opinion. Step 3, research what other fact checkers have said. We may not necessarily be the first to the party, so it's best to research what organizations have already fact checked it to see if they did a good job. If they've done a good job, either agree or disagree with them. Step 4, we'll do our homework. Sometimes Google isn't good enough and they track your every search. So we'll deep dive into various sources if necessary in order to provide the most accurate information. And this one's the most important. Step 5. There's only one standard. The hypocrisy currently on display by the mainstream media is one of the main reasons why so many people are on edge. We've had fact checkers, politicians, including President Biden, and news organizations spend weeks spreading misinformation about how Officer Sicknick sadly passed away, leveraging his death for political points. Unfortunately, a simple fact check would prove their claims wrong, but the mainstream media refused to be honest, leading to half the country believing an officer was beaten to death during the January 6th insurrection when he actually died the next day from a stroke. And that's important to keep in mind, friends, because I believe on the 8th, there was a local news organization in Houston, Texas that basically said Sicknick died from a stroke. The next day, he was never actually beaten. Yet, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, CNN, NBC, they all pushed that Sicknick was beaten to death. But it's quite strange, especially since CNN and NBC, they should have known firsthand because they directly funded a domestic terrorist who was involved in those riots. They should have received all the video footage, which probably would have shown Sicknick not being beaten to death. And if he was beaten to death, it was probably because that person that was there who was egging on the violence, because he's being charged with that right now by Biden's federal prosecutors. So from just the news, and actually, before I get to this, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and go to notcensoredyet.com. Look around. There's also donate links available. Every little bit helps as we are new and trying to grow. Nearly 180 Democrats support forming 12 million 13-member Slavery Reparations Commission. The commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans Acts was reintroduced in the new session of Congress and now has 162 Democratic co-sponsors in the House and 17 Democratic co-sponsors in the Senate. The Senate version was introduced by New Jersey Democrat Senator Cory Booker. The bill was first introduced by former Michigan Democratic Representative John Conyers in 1989. The legislation seeks to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865, and to establish a commission to study and consider a national apology and proposal for reparations for the institution of slavery. Under the bill, the 13-member commission would be comprised of persons who are especially qualified to serve on the commission by virtue of their education, training, activism, or experience, particularly in the field of African American studies and reparatory justice. According to the legislation, 7 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, but a lesser number may hold hearings. So what has me concerned is why? Why? Why do we need to spend money on this right now? We have coronavirus that's currently a thing. $12 million could go towards a commission on helping minority-owned businesses get back on their feet. Helping the minority-owned businesses that were burned to the ground due to Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots that occurred in 2020. So many minority businesses were burned and looted during the course of 2020. Perhaps we should start a commission on how to basically crowdfund to get those businesses up and running again. You have more than 500,000 small businesses permanently shut down, many of those owned by women and people of color, yet they don't care about that. And it seems like a lot of these individuals who are on this basically 13-member Slavery Reparations Commission, they're probably going to be the activists that help get Joe Biden elected, which seems to be kind of a pay for play. Hey, you help me get elected, I'll make sure you get paid $1 million and you'll sit on this Slavery Reparations Commission for a couple years and you'll get paid $1 million every year while you do this. And guess what? You're not going to figure anything out, because a lot of people disagree with reparations, because who was considered negatively affected by slavery? Who's going to pay those reparations? Are Black people going to pay their taxes, and from their taxes they're going to pay reparations to themselves? Is that going to be a thing? Or how are reparations going to work? Because my family was in the United States. My family never owned slaves. So how am I going to be forced, even though I'm a person of color, but I appear to be as white as can be? Am I going to be forced to pay reparations based solely on the color of my skin? Or is it going to be based on my cultural heritage? Is it going to... too many questions to answer, right? And the problem with all of this that's going on is it's just further dividing the country, including what's going on through some of the quotes that were on this. We want to isolate white supremacy. Texas Democratic Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, the sponsor of the House bill, wrote Wednesday on Twitter, "White racism, domestic terrorism. We want to look at each other as our fellow brothers and sisters, and has been said to the ages, our fellow Americans. I want H.R. 40 to be in the minds and hearts of our fellow Americans. Pass and sign it, POTUS." Jerry Nadler said, This moment of national reckoning comes at a time when our nation must find constructive ways to confront the rising tide of racial and ethnic division. I wonder why there's a rising tide of this. Maybe because that's all Democratic politicians can talk about. All you're doing is creating a wedge between our community. Same thing with the mainstream media. On January 6th, we saw an ugly confluence of such divisions as white nationalist. No, you didn't. You didn't see white nationalist groups appeared to be among those playing a central role. No, you also saw a black man who was bankrolled by CNN and NBC, who basically is being charged for violent acts committed at the January 6th insurrection. So you can't say, oh, well, white nationalist groups appear to be among those. No, CNN appeared to be among those playing a central role in bankrolling domestic terrorism. That is what happened. You have corporations that aren't being held liable for the direct sponsorship of criminal activities that occurred on January 6th. And last summer, we saw an outpouring of protests stemming from the killings of unarmed black people by police. And that, again, is not true. I'm old enough to remember when Jacob Blake, an armed black man, when he was shot by police while reaching for a knife in which he dropped after a scuffle with the police. There was riots in Wisconsin. I'm old enough to remember in Pennsylvania when that Hispanic gentleman ran out of the house with a butcher knife chasing a cop and the cop was forced to shoot him. There was riots because of that. Because, maybe if there's a social worker, they could have talked to him. No, he was chasing after them with a butcher knife. And yet people still protested the police actions. The other night, I believe it was in Seattle. I'm fairly certain it was in Washington State. It was either in Washington or Portland. Those two basically state, or Washington or in Oregon, those two states are out of control, but it was in one of those two states. It was a suicide by cop. They chased after the cop. The guy said, do it, do it, do it, shoot me, just kill me, and then started running after the cop with a knife. And the cop had to shoot the gentleman. And there's protests for police violence because of that. No, that was suicide by cop. And how is that the police officer's fault? We should show empathy towards that police officer because guess what? They had to take somebody's life. That's not an easy thing to do. That is not an easy burden to carry. There's a reason why so many cops killed themselves. There's a reason why so many veterans kill themselves. Because guess what? Taking someone's life is not easy. And if it is easy for you to do, then you are a sociopath or you're probably some sort of psycho. Because guess what? It is a burden, right? There is times where it's either me or the other guy, and guess what? I'm going to ensure that I'm the one who survives. However, it's still not easy. It's still a burden to carry. It's still something, basically a monkey on your back, basically just reminding you that you have taken a fellow human being's life. But there's a difference between maliciously taking someone's life and deriving pleasure from it and basically being forced to do so. And a lot of times with our soldiers in the military and our police officers, they are forced to pull that trigger. And a lot of times it's not done by choice. And what really bothers me is last summer, again, just using this quote, last summer we saw an outpouring of protests stemming from the killings of unarmed black people by police. There was a gentleman killed in Ohio. That was a an illegitimate shoot, right? The cop just shot a man holding a cell phone in his garage. There should have been national outrage about that, but there wasn't. There wasn't. If Black Lives Matter truly cared about unarmed black people being gunned down by police, they should have burned down Ohio because of what happened to that gentleman. And I forgot his name, and I don't want to say the wrong name. But that would have been something, even I saw that, and I was like, what the hell? It's so easy for that instance. There would have been a unifying message behind that, right? Basically, this guy literally did nothing wrong. This guy was sitting in his garage and he got shot. He had no gun. He had a cell phone. It's bonkers. And guess what's happening to that cop? That cop is facing charges. However, there was no public outcry over a legitimate case of an unarmed black person being shot by police. It was all these cases of yes, there were minorities being shot by police, but they were armed, and yet there was so much public outcry over it. No. Don't idolize criminals. No, you need to, if you're going to create a vessel for your for your rage. It needs to be something legitimate. It needs to be, if you're going to create an icon, basically, this is why we're doing this. It needs to be something legitimate because everybody can get behind what happened in Ohio. Everybody can say that was wrong. But when you have people like George Floyd who were on drugs, right? Not saying that he died because he was on drugs, but you had somebody with a violent criminal history who was also on drugs. And then you had Jacob Blake, who was armed and fighting police. And then you had a guy chasing after police with a butcher knife. Those aren't the people that you want to celebrate as these were unarmed people killed by police. Well, they weren't unarmed for one, and two, they weren't good people. Now you have a law-abiding citizen doing literally nothing wrong, and nobody cares about him. That's what's wrong with the current Black Lives Matter movement, in my opinion. And the other thing, I don't know if I mentioned this because I had to re-record it because I forgot to hit video on the last take I did. This definitely seems like it has potential for corruption because it seems to be kicking back to the organizations that helped get many Democrats elected. So we need to keep an eye on that, who they pick and how much they get paid, and if they actually do anything, because a lot of government committees like this, they get paid a lot of money, and it seems to be all groups that helped get the president elected or helped get members of Congress elected. They don't do anything and yet still receive millions of dollars. So we'll keep an eye on that, friends. So I'll be dropping another video here in a couple hours. Until then, I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.